The day Rebecca Mitchell handed over her company badge, Melissa Chen thanked her. Her voice was warm, genuine, maybe even a little sad. She said Rebecca had been the best mentor she could have asked for. What Melissa didn't know was that Rebecca had just sent 247 pages of evidence to 6 different people, including Melissa's husband. But this story doesn't start with revenge. It starts 6 months earlier, with a text message sent to the wrong person. On a Tuesday morning in March, Rebecca was in a budget meeting when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Message from her husband, David. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Tom's working late on that Chicago pitch. We'll have the office to ourselves." Tom was Rebecca's boss. The Chicago pitch was Rebecca's project. She was supposed to be working late that night. The message wasn't meant for her. Rebecca set the phone face down. Her expression never changed. Her voice stayed steady when she continued presenting about second quarter marketing spend. She even made a joke about the coffee budget that got polite laughs. But inside, everything went very quiet. 2 weeks ago, David had called her the wrong name in bed, said it was just a slip. Late nights had started in January. New perfume on his shirts, jasmine and something sweet. Showers the moment he walked through the door. A new habit of placing his phone face down on every surface like gravity itself might expose him. The meeting ended at 11:15. Rebecca gathered her papers, smoothed the front of her blazer, walked back to her office, 23 steps, heels clicking on tile. Each step measured, controlled, like she could keep her life from falling apart if she kept her pace perfect. She closed the door behind her, sat at her desk. For 90 seconds, she let herself feel it. The betrayal burning like acid, the humiliation making her skin feel too tight, the rage turning her vision white at the edges. Then she inhaled once, long, deep, and she did what she always did when things got complicated. She made a plan. She opened her personal laptop and created a new folder, titled it Evidence. It felt dramatic for a second, like something a different kind of woman would do, a woman in a movie. But Rebecca wasn't a movie woman. She was a strategist. She was built out of timelines and contingencies and risk. So she built a case. She made a spreadsheet with columns: date, time, location, event, source, proof, notes. She didn't fill it with feelings. She filled it with facts. Then she opened a text document and wrote a single line at the top. "If I'm wrong, I will delete this folder and pretend it never existed." Under that line, she wrote another. "If I'm right, I will never let them call me paranoid." She didn't cry. Not then. Crying would come later, if she earned it. She looked at the budget deck on her monitor. She finished the revisions finance had requested. She sent the updated file. She responded to 2 client emails. She did her job like her life hadn't just been split open. At 12:27, she walked to the break room for coffee. Her hands didn't shake when she pressed the button. At 12:35, Tom Patterson walked past her desk on the phone. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. Tom always moved through the office like the building belonged to him. 52, silver hair, easy smile. A man who spoke like everything was a favor. Rebecca watched him disappear into his office, the door shut, soft, deliberate. At 12:48, Kara, Tom's assistant, stepped out, looked down the hallway like she was checking whether anyone was watching, then stepped back in and closed the door again. Rebecca opened her folder and typed, March. Tom's office door closed during call. Kara checking hallway, not proof, but pattern. At 2:14, David texted, "Running late, big day." Rebecca stared at it for 3 seconds, then replied, "No worries. Good luck." That was the first lie she told in 6 months. She went home at 6, made dinner she didn't eat, kept the kitchen light on, normal, domestic, safe, like a set. David came home at 11:34. He kissed her forehead and asked how her day was. Rebecca said fine. He said his was long. The Chicago pitch was killing him. He smelled like shower gel and something faintly floral under it, as if the jasmine had soaked into his skin and he couldn't scrub it out completely. Rebecca smiled and told him she was proud of him. Then she watched him take his phone into the bathroom the moment he said goodnight. When he came out, he placed his phone face down on the nightstand and slid it slightly toward the wall, like he didn't want it to be seen even by the dog. Rebecca lay beside him and stared at the ceiling for an hour. At 1:12 a.m., when his breathing deepened, she got out of bed and walked quietly to his home office desk. David's laptop was there. Closed, but not locked. It never was. That was the arrogance of being trusted. You stop believing you need to protect anything. Rebecca opened it and looked at the browser history. Sports, news, weather, and long, clean gaps where private browsing had been used. Rebecca didn't click anything. She didn't snoop in a frenzy. She simply photographed the pattern with her phone. Timestamps, empty stretches, enough to show intent. She closed the laptop, walked back to bed, slid under the covers. David shifted, half awake, and mumbled something that sounded like love. Rebecca didn't answer. The next morning, she bought a small camera online during her lunch break. She didn't pick a cute one. She didn't pick a fancy one. She picked the kind that looked like it belonged in a bookshelf, because this wasn't about drama. It was about documentation. 3 days later, Tom Patterson called her into his office. He gestured to the chair. Leather creaked when Rebecca sat. Tom leaned back and smiled the way men smile when they're about to give you something you've earned and still make it sound like you owe them for it. "I've been looking at organizational structure," he said. "It's time for you to move up." Rebecca had been waiting 2 years for this. Senior marketing strategist to senior consultant. More money, more responsibility, her own team. She kept her face neutral and said, "I'm listening." Tom's smile widened. "The catch," he said, like he was sharing a joke, "is that you'll need to train your replacement first." A replacement, not an assistant, not a junior, a replacement. "Her name is Melissa Chen," Tom continued. "San Francisco office, sharp, hungry, great energy. We're bringing her in to take over your accounts so you can transition upstairs." 6 months, he said. Full knowledge transfer, everything, all her contacts, all her clients, 8 years of work. Rebecca's smile didn't waver, not once. She nodded like it was normal, like this was what she'd expected. "When does she start?" "Monday." Rebecca stood, shook his hand. His palm was dry and warm, confident, the hand of a man who believed consequences were for other people. Rebecca walked back to her office, closed her door, sat down. She stared at her evidence folder and felt something hard settle behind her ribs. She typed a new entry. March 15th. Tom announces promotion 3 days after accidental text. Replacement arrives Monday. Timing suspicious. 3 pages. About to become much more. That weekend, Rebecca didn't confront David. She didn't yell. She didn't throw anything. She didn't demand his phone. She researched. She found Melissa Chen's LinkedIn. Professional. Polished. Sparse in a way that felt curated. Stanford. 3 years in San Francisco. Recommendations that sounded like they'd been written by people who wanted to stay on her good side. Rebecca searched Instagram. It was private. But mutual connections exist for a reason. A friend of a friend. A tagged photo. A comment thread. Enough to find a handle. Rebecca didn't hack anything. She didn't break into accounts. She just followed the public breadcrumbs. She found a story highlight from 2 months ago. A moving truck. A city skyline. A caption. New chapter. Chicago. Before Tom had decided to bring Melissa in, Rebecca searched rental listings and property records the way she searched market demographics. Methodically. Patiently. No wasted motion. She found an apartment lease filed publicly. Downtown Chicago. Start date 2 months earlier. Melissa hadn't been transferred. She'd been planted. On Sunday night, Rebecca installed the camera in her home office, hidden inside a bookshelf, angled toward her desk. Not because she wanted to see, because she needed proof. She needed her reality to be undeniable on paper. She tested the angle, adjusted it by 1/2 inch, checked the timestamp, synced it. Then she put the books back exactly the way they'd been. Monday morning, Melissa Chen arrived with nervous energy and a canvas tote bag. 26, dark hair and a professional ponytail. Firm handshake, impressive smile, the kind that makes you think you can trust it. She said, "I'm so grateful to learn from you. Everyone in San Francisco talks about your campaigns." Rebecca smiled and said, "That's very kind." She led Melissa to the conference room. Glass walls, river view. The kind of room people use to close deals and pretend they're not scared. Rebecca taught for 3 hours. Thorough, patient, answered every question. provided context, offered examples, gave Melissa the kind of mentorship Rebecca had once given freely, back when she believed people were what they pretended to be. Melissa took notes like her life depended on it, and in a way, it did. 2 hours in, Melissa asked casually, "Do you ever keep any client notes off system, like your own files?" Rebecca's smile stayed polite. "Everything that matters goes in the system." Melissa nodded, too fast. "Right, of course." At 2:47, Melissa excused herself to the bathroom. Rebecca waited for the door to close. Melissa's laptop was on the table, unlocked. A gift, either carelessness or arrogance. Rebecca wasn't sure which was worse. A text conversation was open on the screen. Rebecca's lungs didn't move for a second. David Mitchell, her husband. She took 3 screenshots, 15 seconds total, 2:15 p.m. David, how was the first day with her? 2:43 p.m. Melissa, she's actually really nice, I feel bad. David, don't. She's been coasting for years. This company needs new blood. Melissa, when can I see you? David, tonight. My place. She's got that dinner with the nonprofit board. Rebecca closed the laptop with the same care she used when closing a client contract folder. No shaking, no panic, no dramatic inhale. The bathroom door opened. Melissa returned and said, "Sorry about that." Rebecca smiled. "No problem. Let's go over Hendricks next." Hendricks was their oldest client. The one who called Rebecca directly, the one who trusted her. Melissa opened her notebook. Pen poised. Rebecca began to teach. Under the table, her fingernails cut crescents into her palms. That night, Rebecca went to her nonprofit board dinner. Chicago Arts Initiative, 4 years on the board. They were voting on next year's budget. The restaurant downtown had white tablecloths and candles in glass holders. The air smelled like roasted garlic and wine. Rebecca performed. She presented. She answered questions. She smiled. She laughed softly at the right moments. She looked like the same woman she'd been the week before. At 8:43, she excused herself, locked the bathroom stall, opened the security camera app on her phone. The feed loaded. David and Melissa, on Rebecca's desk. The desk where she'd written her MBA thesis, where she'd built the presentation that won their biggest account, where she'd spent countless late nights while David watched television in the other room and told her she was so driven. Rebecca watched for 15 seconds. Not more. She didn't need more. She noted the timestamp. 8:44 p.m. Closed the app. Flushed a toilet she hadn't used. Washed her hands in water that was too hot. Stared at herself in the mirror. Makeup still perfect. Hair still neat. Expression calm. She looked exactly the same as she had that morning. But something inside her had calcified into something cold and sharp and patient. She returned to the dinner, voted yes on the budget, made small talk about grants and outreach, drove home at 10:30. The house smelled like Melissa's perfume, vanilla and jasmine. David came home at 11:15. He kissed Rebecca's forehead, asked how her evening was. "Productive," Rebecca said. "How was yours?" she asked. "Long," David said. "That Chicago pitch is killing me." Rebecca nodded. "I'm sure you'll manage." He smiled, relieved by her softness, and went to shower. Rebecca went to her home office. She added the video file to her evidence folder, dated it, time-stamped it, saved a backup copy, 47 pages now. Training continued, 9 to 5, sometimes later. Rebecca taught everything. Not just the obvious things you could find in a shared drive, not just the decks and the templates and the schedules. She taught the invisible parts. The parts you only learn after years of wins and mistakes. Which clients needed to feel like they were being consulted instead of sold. Which ones wanted data first and emotion last. Which ones would panic if you went quiet for more than a day. Which ones needed you to call them, not email. Which ones respected boundaries and which ones tested them for sport. Melissa was a quick study. She asked smart questions. She sent thank you emails after each session, like she had a script for gratitude. "Rebecca, I really appreciate your time today. I learned so much." Rebecca replied with one sentence. Professional, neutral, no warmth, no hostility, just normal. Because normal was a mask, and Rebecca wore it better than anyone. But she documented everything. Every forwarded email Melissa sent to herself for later. Every file Melissa copied to a USB drive and claimed was, just so I can work from home. Every photo Melissa took of proprietary information under the excuse of, I'm visual, it helps me remember. Rebecca didn't argue. She didn't accuse. She didn't block access, because blocking access would have warned Melissa that Rebecca was paying attention. Instead, Rebecca gave access, and she watched what Melissa did with it. She used quiet methods, the kind of methods people never notice until it's too late. She added a tracker to a non-sensitive document and waited to see if it was opened from a non-company IP address. It was. She created a folder of archived pitch materials and placed it where Melissa would find it if she was snooping. Melissa opened it at 11:32 p.m. on a Thursday night. Rebecca wrote it down. She set a harmless watermark on one deck and watched it show up as a file attached to an email forwarded to an outside address, Melissa's personal Gmail. Rebecca didn't react. She simply added the screenshot to the evidence folder and labeled it Exfiltration, Personal Account, Date, Time. The folder grew. 50 pages, 60, 70, and patterns started to emerge. Melissa wasn't just learning Rebecca's job. Melissa was systematically downloading Rebecca's entire professional life. Client lists, pricing strategies, pitch decks, market research, vendor relationships, the notes Rebecca had made after difficult client calls, the tiny observations that made her effective. Melissa took it all, and she did it with a smile. At first, Rebecca wondered if it was just over-eagerness, a junior employee trying too hard, a talent trying to prove she deserved the role. But then the questions started to change. One afternoon, while they were reviewing a proposal, Melissa asked, "How do you decide which clients are worth fighting for?" Rebecca looked up. "What do you mean?" Melissa smiled. "Like, which ones do you invest more in? Which ones are the most profitable? If you had to pick 3 to take with you wherever you go, which would it be?" It was a casual question if you didn't know what to listen for, but Rebecca heard it. Pick 3 to take with you. Like clients were property, like clients were luggage. Rebecca answered calmly, "I don't think like that. Clients aren't objects. They choose who they work with." Melissa nodded slowly, as if she was filing that away. "Right. Of course." Then she asked, "And what's the fastest way you've ever closed a deal?" Rebecca smiled. Follow up. Melissa's pen moved. "How quickly?" "Within 24 hours. Melissa nodded again, and her smile was just a little too pleased, like she'd gotten a key. That night, Rebecca went home and checked the camera. David and Melissa were in her home office again. They weren't just having sex this time. They were going through her files. Rebecca watched Melissa hold her phone over a stack of documents. Click, click, click. Like she was scanning the life out of them. David stood beside her, pointing at something on the paper and smiling like he was proud. Rebecca saved the clip, time-stamped it, labeled it, home, proprietary files, photo capture, date, time. Then she opened her evidence folder and stared at the total page count, 81 pages, and she wasn't even at April yet. The business registration appeared like a trapdoor. Rebecca wasn't searching for it at first. She was looking at public records for an unrelated reason, checking if a vendor had changed legal entity names, something she'd once done for a client due diligence report. Then she saw the name in the search results, Chen Mitchell Consulting. Her stomach didn't drop. It didn't even twist. It went still. Rebecca clicked. New LLC. Registered in Illinois. Filed 3 weeks earlier. Registered agent, Melissa Chen. Business address, David's office building. Rebecca sat very still at her home office desk, the same desk where she'd watched them on camera. She pulled up the full filing documents, read them twice. Marketing and consulting services. The exact same services her employer provided. Rebecca didn't blink for a long time. They weren't just having an affair. They were building a competing business, using her life as raw material. She printed the filing, then printed the registered address, then printed the date. She slid them into the evidence folder and wrote a new heading in her spreadsheet. Competitor Formation, LLC, Chen Mitchell Consulting. Then she made a decision that surprised even her. She was going to help them, give them everything they wanted, every strategy, every contact, every piece of information they needed to start, and it was going to destroy them. The next morning, she began making calculated mistakes. Nothing obvious, nothing that would make Melissa pause and think Rebecca was sabotaging her. Just subtle errors that would bloom later, like poison planted in soil. She gave Melissa a client contact list, but she included 3 clients who had specifically requested never to be cold contacted, clients who considered it harassment, clients who would file complaints if they got outreach. She explained pricing strategies, but she used numbers 15% too high to stay competitive. She reviewed pitch process, but she left out the crucial detail about follow-ups within 24 hours, the detail that turned interest into contracts. She taught Melissa how to do the job, just taught her how to do it wrong. And then she documented every piece of false information provided: date, time, topic, what she said, how it differed from the correct approach. Because when this was over, she needed to prove it wasn't negligence. It was intent. But she didn't call it sabotage, not even in her own head. She called it training delivered per company standard with natural execution errors. That phrase appeared in her notes again and again. It was a shield. At home, David became distant. He stopped asking about her day, stopped suggesting dinner or movies, more time at the office, more time on his phone. The phone he kept face down everywhere. The phone he took into the bathroom. The phone that buzzed with notifications he never opened in front of her. Rebecca played the concerned wife perfectly. She suggested couples counseling. She suggested a weekend trip to Michigan, that bed and breakfast from their anniversary 3 years ago. David said they'd talk about it later. He was busy. This new project was stressful. Rebecca nodded and said she understood. Then she checked the camera. David and Melissa were at her desk again. They were laughing this time. Comfortable, familiar. Melissa sat in Rebecca's chair like she belonged there, like she'd already moved in. David leaned over her shoulder and kissed the side of her neck. Rebecca watched it without flinching, because flinching didn't help. Documentation helped. She saved the video. No tremor in her fingers, no hesitation. Just the cold work of building a case. In early May, Rebecca did something unexpected. She called Melissa's husband. She found him through Melissa's emergency contact form. Jason Chen, 26. Software engineer at a downtown startup. His LinkedIn showed thick-framed glasses and an easy smile. Photos showed a couple who looked genuinely happy. Wedding 2 years ago. Outdoor venue. Melissa in a simple white dress. Rebecca called from a burner phone during lunch, sitting in her car. Far corner of the parking garage. No security cameras. 3 rings. Hello? Rebecca kept her voice calm. Even. Factual. Mr. Chen, you don't know me, but I need to tell you something about your wife. Pause. Who is this? My name is Rebecca Mitchell. Your wife is training to take over my position at work. She's also sleeping with my husband. Silence. I have proof. Video evidence. Text messages. Timestamps. I'm compiling everything for legal purposes. I thought you deserved to know. The silence stretched. Why are you telling me this? Rebecca had thought about this question. Thought about it a lot. Because when I destroy them professionally, I want you to be able to destroy them personally. You deserve that option. Another pause. When? 3 weeks. Same day I send it to everyone else. Why wait? Because I need them to feel safe. I need them to keep making mistakes. They will. If they think they're getting away with it. Jason's voice was very quiet. Can I help? Rebecca hadn't expected that. What? Can I help you? Document things. I have access to Melissa's laptop at home, her files. I want to help. Rebecca's heart was pounding. An ally. Someone who understood. But also, using him made this bigger, more complicated, more dangerous. Let me think about it, she said. I'll contact you in 3 days. Jason didn't argue. He just said, okay, like he was holding himself together with tape. Rebecca ended the call, threw the burner phone in a dumpster 3 blocks away, went back to work, taught Melissa about client retention strategies, the wrong strategies, the ones that would make clients leave. Week 3 of training, Melissa hesitated during an afternoon session. "Can I ask something personal?" Rebecca looked up. "How do you balance everything?" Melissa asked. "The job, marriage, making it all work." Rebecca's throat tightened. Melissa sounded genuinely curious. Like she admired Rebecca, like she felt guilty. "You just do," Rebecca said. "You make it work with the person you love." Melissa's eyes dropped, just for a second. Then she smiled and opened her notebook again. Rebecca realized Melissa's guilt wasn't enough to stop her. That made it worse somehow, because it meant Melissa knew exactly what she was doing, and she was doing it anyway. Late April, Tom called Rebecca in again. "Really impressed with how this is going," he said. "Melissa speaks highly of you." "She's an excellent student," Rebecca said. "I'm thinking we accelerate," Tom said. "Have her take over fully by end of May instead of September." 2 months early. Rebecca's mind raced. She wasn't ready. She didn't have enough documentation yet. "That's quite a change," she said carefully. "I want to make sure she's fully prepared." Tom leaned forward. "Between you and me," he said, lowering his voice, "the board wants you upstairs faster than expected. This is good news, Rebecca." Something in his tone made her pause. The board wants you upstairs, not just Tom. The board was watching this transition. "Of course," Rebecca said, keeping her smile steady. "Whatever the company needs." But her stomach was ice. They wanted her out faster, which meant she had less time than she thought. Rebecca returned to her office and opened the evidence folder. Added note, April 24th. Tom accelerates timeline. 2 months cut. Board apparently involved. Need to work faster. Evidence folder. 112 pages. That night, David came home late again. Rebecca was on the sofa pretending to read. David sat beside her. There was a long silence. Then he said quietly, "I miss you." Rebecca's heart clenched. He sounded like he meant it. "You're right here," Rebecca said. "I know," David said, staring at the floor. "But I miss us." He looked genuinely sad, genuinely confused, like part of him didn't understand what he was doing. Rebecca almost broke, almost said everything. Then she remembered the messages, the video, the LLC. She smiled, touched his hand. "We're fine," she said. "Everything's fine." He wanted to believe it. She saw it in his face. He wanted it to be that simple. "I love you," David said. And the worst part was, Rebecca thought he might actually believe that. People were good at lying to themselves. "I love you too," she said, and she'd never meant anything less in her life. Rebecca met Jason 3 days later. Not at her office, not near Melissa's apartment, not anywhere that would show up on a routine camera sweep. A coffee shop in a different neighborhood. Early morning. The kind of place with mismatched chairs and baristas who didn't look up long enough to remember faces. Jason arrived 5 minutes early. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes, hands too still, like he was afraid to move and crack. He didn't order anything. He sat across from Rebecca and slid a small USB drive onto the table between them. "I've been going through her laptop," he said. Rebecca didn't reach for it immediately. She watched his face first. "Everything she's copied from work," Jason continued. "Client files, pricing, decks, notes, even screenshots of internal chat threads. She's not just flirting. She's not just cheating. She's building something." Rebecca's throat tightened. She already knew, but hearing it from someone else made it real in a new way. "You didn't have to do this," Rebecca said. "Yes, I did," Jason replied. His voice cracked on the last word. "We've been married 2 years. We were trying for a baby last month. And the whole time she was doing this." Rebecca's chest hurt, a deep, slow ache. "I'm sorry," she said. Jason stared down at the table. "Don't be. Just make sure she pays for it." Rebecca finally took the USB drive, put it in her bag without looking at it, like it was radioactive. "When this is over," she said, "everything I send to my company, I'll send to you too, so you can use it in divorce proceedings." Jason looked up. His eyes were red but dry. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a moment. Two strangers bonded by the same betrayal. Then Jason asked quietly, Do you ever wonder if we should have just confronted them? Done this the normal way? Rebecca thought about that. Every day. Every day, she said. But then I remember, they didn't choose normal. They chose this. Lying, stealing, planning to destroy us. Jason nodded once, like he needed to hear it. We're just responding in kind, Rebecca said. She left the coffee shop and drove to work with the USB drive in her purse like a second heartbeat. At her desk, she waited until the office noise settled into its usual rhythm. Phones ringing, keys clicking, people laughing at jokes they didn't mean. Then she opened her evidence folder, created a new subfolder. Jason, home device copy. She plugged in the USB drive. What Jason had pulled was worse than she expected. There were folders labeled innocently. Work notes, templates, ideas. Inside were exported client lists, pricing matrices, draft pitch emails written in Melissa's voice but using Rebecca's structure. A spreadsheet titled Targets. Targets. Like clients were prey. There were screenshots of messages between Melissa and David. And in one screenshot, a line that made Rebecca's hands go cold. David, once you're in her seat, you'll have everything. Don't worry about her. Tom's handling the timeline. Tom's handling the timeline. Rebecca saved the screenshot and labeled it Tom involvement, implied, date, time. Then she created a timeline document and updated it, because her case was no longer about an affair. It was about a coordinated removal, and the closer she looked, the more the pieces fit. The next week, the first client almost fell. Hendricks called, not an email, a call. Rebecca's office phone rang at 9:16. Caller ID, Hendricks, direct line. Rebecca picked up. Good morning, Leanne. Silence. Then Leanne's voice, careful. Rebecca, did you send Melissa? Rebecca's stomach tightened. Melissa is training under me, she said evenly. Why? Leanne exhaled. She reached out yesterday, from a personal Gmail, asked me to jump on a quick call about new pricing. Rebecca kept her tone calm. Did she send any documents? No, Leanne said, but she referenced your Q2 rates, the ones we negotiated confidentially. Rebecca's grip tightened on the receiver. I'm handling it, she said. I'm sorry. Leanne's voice softened. Are you okay? Rebecca almost laughed. The question was so human it hurt. I'm fine, she said. Thank you for telling me. She hung up and stared at her desk for 3 seconds. Then she opened the evidence folder, created a new section, Client Outreach, Off System. She documented the call, time, details, what Melissa had done. Melissa wasn't waiting until she officially had the job. She was already practicing theft in daylight. That afternoon, Rebecca watched Melissa more closely, not like a paranoid wife, like an auditor. Melissa stayed late, not unusual, but she didn't stay late to work. She stayed late to copy. Rebecca saw her pull out a small external drive, saw her angle her laptop away from the glass walls, saw her glance around like she'd done it before. Rebecca didn't confront her. She walked past and said casually, Big night? Melissa jumped slightly, smiled too quickly. Just want to make sure I'm fully prepared, she said. Rebecca smiled back. Love that initiative. Then she walked away and wrote down the time, April 29th. Melissa copying files after hours. External drive observed. That night, David came home at 1 a.m. He smelled like cologne layered over soap. He kissed Rebecca's cheek and asked if she was asleep. Rebecca mumbled something that sounded like yes. David went to shower. Rebecca opened the security camera app. David and Melissa weren't in the office this time. They were in her home office. Again, Melissa was barefoot. David's tie was on the floor. They weren't laughing now. They were focused. Melissa held her phone over Rebecca's files, clicking photo after photo. David leaned over her shoulder and pointed at something on the page, his mouth moving like he was explaining. Rebecca watched for 20 seconds. Then she closed the app and lay back down. Her heartbeat stayed steady. Not because she wasn't furious, because she'd crossed into a different kind of emotion. Cold, purposeful. The close call came on May 18th. Conference room, annual reports. Rebecca's phone in her bag, recording like always. Melissa's phone rang. Her expression changed. Worry, maybe fear. "Sorry," Melissa said. "I need to take this." "Of course," Rebecca replied. Melissa stepped into the hallway. Through the glass, Rebecca could see her pacing, gesturing, face tight. Rebecca reached into her bag. She needed to check the recording timestamp, make sure it was capturing. That's when she saw it. Her phone screen was facing up, recording app visible, still running, 04 minutes 32 seconds. If Melissa came back and glanced at the bag, she'd see it. Rebecca's heart slammed against her ribs. First time in weeks her pulse spiked like this. She closed the recording app, turned the phone face down, repositioned the bag. 5 seconds. The door opened. Melissa came back in, face still tight. "Everything okay?" Rebecca asked, like she was asking about the weather. Melissa sat down. "Fine, just landlord, apartment issues." "That sounds frustrating," Rebecca said. Melissa opened her laptop. Her fingers trembled slightly on the keyboard. Rebecca made a decision. "You know what?" she said lightly. "It's 4:30. Let's call it a day." Melissa looked up, grateful. "You sure?" "Absolutely. Go deal with your situation." Melissa smiled. "You're seriously the best mentor ever." Rebecca smiled back. "I try." Melissa packed up and left. Rebecca stayed in the conference room alone, heart still racing, too close. If Melissa had seen that recording app, everything would have ended right there, and not on Rebecca's terms. She needed to move faster. The following Monday morning, Tom stopped Rebecca in the hallway. "Got a second?" He didn't say it like a request. He said it like a command wrapped in politeness. In his office, he closed the door. "I've been hearing interesting things," Tom said. He watched her carefully, like he was studying a reaction. "Melissa mentioned you seem different lately, distracted. Is everything okay?" Rebecca's mind moved fast. Melissa was suspicious. She'd gone to Tom. "Everything's fine," Rebecca said. "Just a lot on my mind with the transition." Tom tilted his head. "Sure it's not something else? Problems at home, maybe?" He was fishing. Rebecca smiled, calm, controlled. "Tom," she said, "if I had problems at home, I'd handle them at home. My work speaks for itself." Tom's smile flickered. "Of course," he said. "Of course. I'm just checking in. We need this transition smooth." "We?" Rebecca thought. Tom leaned forward slightly. "I've been thinking about optics," he said, voice soft. "Transitions can get emotional. People get attached to their accounts, to their status, to being needed." Rebecca didn't move. Tom continued, almost gentle. "And when people get emotional, they sometimes do things they regret. They send emails they shouldn't. They make accusations. They create drama." There it was. Not advice. A warning. Rebecca kept her voice neutral. "I'm not emotional." Tom smiled. "No, you're not. That's why you're valuable." He stood and walked to the window. The city behind him looked like a reward. "But there are people upstairs who worry," Tom said, "that you might not let go cleanly." Rebecca's skin went cold. Tom turned back. "So let's make this simple," he said. "You finish the transfer by May 31st. You walk upstairs. You stop looking backward." His smile hardened. "Because if anyone starts asking questions about client lists, about logs, about who accessed what, those questions can land on you too." Rebecca understood exactly what he was doing. He was building a threat. If she spoke, he would smear her. If she moved wrong, he would blame her. Rebecca nodded once. Professional. Calm. "Understood," she said. She left his office and walked back to her desk like nothing had happened. Then she opened the evidence folder and wrote, May 20th. Tom attempts intimidation. Implicit threat of blame shifting. Timeline now hard deadline. 10 days away. She was running out of time. That night, Rebecca got an encrypted message from Jason. Found something. Melissa's been talking to a lawyer about filing harassment complaint against you, making it look like you're creating hostile training environment. They want you gone before you can expose them. Rebecca's blood went cold. They were planning to flip it, make her the villain. She typed back. When? Jason replied. Don't know, but her notes mention before Memorial Day, 2 weeks away. Rebecca stared at the message until her eyes hurt. If Melissa filed first, everything Rebecca had built would look like retaliation. Even if Rebecca had proof, even if Rebecca was right, it would look like she was punishing a younger woman for stealing her husband. And the company would do what companies always do when things get messy. They'd protect themselves. Rebecca typed, "Thank you, be ready." Then she sat on her couch in the dark and listened to David shower upstairs. The sound of water hitting tile, the sound of him washing away evidence. The next morning, HR emailed Rebecca. Subject line, check-in, training transition. No accusation, no details. Just a calendar invite for 2 p.m. Rebecca read it twice. Then she looked up and saw Melissa across the office, laughing at something on her screen. Too relaxed, too confident. At 2 p.m., Rebecca walked into a glass conference room, and Melissa was already seated inside. That wasn't normal. HR smiled too brightly. "We like to do proactive check-ins," she said, "just making sure everyone feels supported." Melissa's hands were folded perfectly on the table, but her foot tapped once under the table. A tiny tell. HR asked gentle questions. "How's training going? Any concerns with workload? Any tension we should be aware of?" Rebecca answered calmly. "Professional. Boring." Then Melissa spoke, her voice small, vulnerable, carefully constructed. "Sometimes I feel like Rebecca doesn't want me to succeed," she said. Rebecca didn't blink. HR tilted her head. "What makes you feel that way?" Melissa looked down. "It's just comments," she said softly. "Little things, like reminding me she built everything here. It makes me feel unwelcome." It was smooth. It was practiced. Rebecca understood immediately. This wasn't a complaint yet. This was a pre-complaint, a record, a seed planted in HR's mind. Rebecca kept her voice even. "I'm sorry if anything I've said landed wrong," she said. "That wasn't my intent. My goal is a successful transition." Melissa's eyes flicked up, quick as a blade. HR smiled. "Great, then we'll check in again next week." Next week, after Memorial Day. Rebecca walked out of the room with her hands cold and her face calm. They were building a story where she was the problem. If she waited too long, that story would be the only one anyone heard. That night, Rebecca and Jason had an encrypted chat. Jason typed, "I have an idea." Rebecca typed back, "Tell me." Jason, "What if I confront Melissa, act like I'm suspicious, see if she contacts David?" Rebecca's stomach tightened. Too dangerous. If Melissa knew Jason suspected, she'd scrub everything, delete texts, move the LLC, go silent. Rebecca typed, "Too risky. If she knows you suspect," Jason replied immediately, "she'll go to David, and they'll talk about their plan, and you'll be recording." Rebecca stared at the screen. He was right. If Melissa felt threatened at home, she would run to David, and if she ran to David, they would talk, they would strategize, they would say the quiet parts out loud. Rebecca typed, "Okay, but be careful. Don't let her know you know everything, just enough to make her nervous." Jason, "When?" Rebecca, "Tomorrow night. I'll make sure David's home. I'll record everything." Jason, "Understood." Rebecca put her phone down and stared at the ceiling. She wasn't just documenting anymore. She was setting a trap, and she could feel the moment her plan crossed from defense into offense. She didn't know what that made her. She only knew she didn't have time to care. The next evening, at 7 p.m., Rebecca was home. David was on the sofa watching television like a man with nothing to hide. One arm over the back cushion, one leg crossed over the other, the volume low, the glow of the screen washing his face in soft blue light. Rebecca moved through the house calmly. She poured herself a glass of water. She checked the lock on the front door. She walked past the home office and made sure the camera angle was still clean. Then she sat at the dining table with her laptop open and her phone face up, waiting. Her phone buzzed, a message from Jason, "Starting now." Rebecca's pulse didn't spike, not yet. She watched David out of the corner of her eye. He laughed once at something on the screen, a real laugh, like the world was simple. 15 minutes later, David's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. He answered immediately. "Hey," David said. "What's wrong?" Rebecca held her breath. A pause. David's expression changed. His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward the hallway. "Slow down," he said. "What did he say?" Longer pause. "No," David said, voice lowering. "No, I'm sure he doesn't actually know anything. He's probably just—" "Melissa, breathe." "Melissa." Rebecca's fingers went still on the table. David stood and walked toward the home office. Rebecca didn't move. She didn't follow. She didn't look like she was listening, but she didn't need to. The recording device in the office was already running. David closed the office door behind him. Not fully, just enough to muffle his voice. It didn't matter. The microphone caught everything. "Okay," David said. "Listen, we stick to the plan." Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "Stick to the plan." David continued, voice tight but controlled. "You finish training week after next. We wait 1 month after you start. Then we reach out to the clients. By then Rebecca will be on the executive floor. She won't even notice." A pause. Then David said, like he was reassuring a child, "No, Tom won't say anything. He's in on it, remember? He gets a cut once we're established." Rebecca's hands went cold. Tom was in on it. Not just facilitating. Not just looking away. Actively participating. David kept talking. "The LLC is clean. Everything's clean. In 6 months we'll be making twice what we make now, and Rebecca will never know." Pause. "I know you feel bad," David said, "but think about it. We're not hurting her. She's getting promoted. She'll be fine. We're just taking what we built." What we built. Rebecca stared at the wall in front of her. Her work, her clients, her strategies, and they thought they were entitled to it. David's voice softened, almost affectionate. "Okay," he said. "Okay, just don't panic. Don't do anything stupid. I'll talk to Tom tomorrow. We're fine." The call ended. David stayed in the office for a moment, like he was trying to calm himself down. Then he walked back into the living room. Rebecca looked up at him and smiled. "You okay?" she asked gently. David forced a smile. "Yeah, work stuff," Rebecca nodded. "Long day?" "Yeah," David said. He sat back down, picked up the remote, turned the volume up a little too loud. Rebecca went to the kitchen and washed a glass that was already clean. Her hands didn't shake. She waited until David went to bed. Then she went into the home office, pulled the recording, and saved it in 3 places. Evidence folder, backup drive, cloud storage. She labeled it carefully. Audio, plan confession, Tom cut, client theft intent. Then she sat down and stared at the page count. 183 pages now. The next day at work, Melissa looked different. Her eyes were red, her face drawn, like she'd been crying or not sleeping, like the guilt had finally started to weigh enough to change her posture. Rebecca watched her carefully. Melissa didn't smile as easily, didn't chatter, didn't throw out little compliments like currency. They worked in silence for a while. Then Melissa said quietly, "Can I tell you something?" Rebecca looked up. "Of course." Melissa's voice cracked. I think I'm in love with someone I shouldn't be." Rebecca's chest tightened. Here it was. A confession hovering at the edge of truth. Part of Rebecca wanted to hear it, wanted Melissa to say it out loud, wanted her to name the betrayal like a crime. But another part of Rebecca didn't want to give her that relief, because confession can be a form of forgiveness, a way to lighten your own burden by handing it to someone else. Rebecca kept her voice steady. "We all make choices," she said carefully. "The question is whether we can live with them." Melissa swallowed, her eyes filled with tears. "What if you can't take it back?" she whispered. "What if you've already hurt people and there's no way to fix it?" Rebecca thought about the recording devices, the evidence folder, the months of acting normal. She thought about the person she used to be. Then she looked at Melissa and said softly, "Then you face the consequences, and you hope you're strong enough to survive them." Melissa nodded, wiped her eyes quickly. "You're right," she said. "Thank you." And Rebecca felt something unexpected, not sympathy exactly, but understanding. Melissa was 26, young enough to think desire was destiny, young enough to mistake adrenaline for love, young enough to believe she could take what she wanted and still be a good person. David was 38. He knew better. This was his plan, his manipulation, and Melissa was just... Rebecca stopped the thought. No. Melissa made her choices, knew they were wrong, did them anyway. Feeling guilty didn't undo the damage. That weekend, Memorial Day weekend, Rebecca didn't go to the lake. She didn't barbecue. She didn't pretend she had a normal life. She organized 3 days of quiet work, every screenshot, every recording, every document, chronological, by category, by person, David, Melissa, Tom, Jason. She created a timeline that showed how everything connected. The accidental text, the promotion announcement, Melissa's pre-existing lease, the file exfiltration, the LLC formation, the plan to steal clients, Tom's involvement and profit, the attempted HR narrative shift. It was airtight, irrefutable, and still, Rebecca knew one thing. Evidence is only powerful if you deliver it before someone else delivers a lie. On Friday, she met her divorce attorney, Elaine Porter. Elaine's office smelled like lemon cleaner and expensive paper. The kind of office where people come in broken and leave rearranged. Elaine flipped through Rebecca's binder slowly. Screenshots, timeline, dates. You have more documentation than most private investigators, Elaine said. Rebecca didn't smile. I wanted to be sure. Elaine looked up. Do you want to win, or do you want to punish? Rebecca's jaw tightened. Elaine tapped the page with the LLC registration. This is leverage, she said. But leverage works best when you're clean. Rebecca's chest tightened. I am clean. Elaine held her gaze. Then stop writing anything that sounds like sabotage, Elaine said. Stop using that word in your own head. If this goes sideways, they will paint you as unstable, vindictive. They will say you manufactured evidence. I didn't, Rebecca said. I know, Elaine replied. But court isn't about truth. It's about what you can prove without giving them oxygen. Rebecca exhaled slowly. What do you recommend? She asked. Elaine slid 2 envelopes across the desk. These get served after you send your corporate package, Elaine said. Not before. Timing matters. Rebecca stared at the envelopes like they weighed 100 pounds. Elaine's voice softened. One more thing, she said. If you're recording people, be careful. Different rules, different consequences. Rebecca nodded once. I understand. Elaine leaned back. Okay, she said. Then let's make sure when this detonates, it detonates in the right direction. Rebecca left the office with the envelopes in her bag and the weight of her life in her chest. That same afternoon, she met Jason one last time. A small park. Quiet. Wind moving through trees like whispers. Jason looked different. More resolved, less broken. I filed for divorce this morning, he said. Didn't tell her why, just said I wanted out. Rebecca swallowed. How did she react? Confused, Jason said. Asked if it was about work stress. I said yes. She believed it. He slid an envelope across the bench. Copy of her laptop hard drive, he said. Everything she's stolen, every conversation with David, every plan they made. Rebecca took it. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, Jason said. His voice wasn't shaking anymore. She destroyed our marriage. I want her to know I know. I want her to understand that actions have consequences. Rebecca met his eyes and saw her own pain reflected there. 3 days, Rebecca said. Wednesday is my last day. I send everything Wednesday at 5 p.m. Jason nodded. I'll be waiting. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Jason asked quietly, Do you think we're doing the right thing? Rebecca thought about that. She thought about the HR meeting, the pre-complaint, the way Melissa's voice had been small and innocent while she tried to set Rebecca on fire. I think we're doing the only thing, Rebecca said. They chose to hurt us. We're just making sure everyone else knows who they really are. Jason stared at the ground. Is that justice or revenge? He asked. Rebecca didn't answer immediately, because the truth was, she didn't know. Or maybe she did, and she just didn't want to say it out loud. Maybe there's no difference, she said. The final week arrived with surprising speed. Tuesday, there was a goodbye lunch. The whole team, 15 people at an Italian place down the street. Pushed together tables, cheap wine, too much laughter. Someone gave Rebecca a gift card to her favorite restaurant. Someone else gave her a framed photo from last year's company retreat. Tom stood and made a speech about Rebecca's dedication, her brilliance, how excited they were for her new role. Everyone clapped. Melissa hugged her and said she'd miss working with her directly. Rebecca smiled and said, "You're going to do great." And she meant it. Melissa would do great for about 3 days. Then the cracks would start to show. Wednesday morning, Rebecca arrived at 5:30 a.m. The office was empty, silent except for the HVAC hum. Her desk was mostly cleared. She'd been moving things all week, quietly, methodically, like she was dismantling a life without making noise. She did one final sweep. Every personal item gone, every official file transferred correctly, everything documented, everything above reproach. At 9 a.m., Tom called her in for an exit interview. Late morning sun through his window made everything look golden, like the universe was trying to soften what was about to happen. Tom smiled. "Honestly, better than I hoped. Melissa's ready. You're moving up. Everyone wins." Rebecca smiled back. "Glad it worked out." Tom leaned forward. "I know this was hard," he said, "training your replacement, but you handled it with real grace." Grace. If he only knew. "I try to be professional," Rebecca said. Tom stood and extended his hand. "One more thing before you go," he said. "Margaret Hayes wanted me to pass along her congratulations. She's been following your career closely." Margaret Hayes, board chair, the woman who'd hired Rebecca 8 years ago. Something about the way Tom said it, "following your career closely," made Rebecca's skin tighten. She filed it away. "Please thank her for me," Rebecca said. Tom nodded. "Of course. Now, badge and access card." Rebecca handed them over, the plastic warm from her pocket. Tom took them like he was collecting a trophy. He shook her hand, firm, confident. Rebecca walked out of his office, walked to Melissa's desk, her old desk, 8 years at that desk, lunches eaten at her computer, late nights finishing presentations, calls with clients who became friends. Melissa stood and hugged her. "Thank you for everything," Melissa said. "Really, I learned so much," Rebecca smiled. "I'm glad," she said. "Good luck." Then she walked to her car, got in, closed the door, and sat for one moment. This was it. Point of no return. She thought about David, about Melissa, about Tom, about Jason, about the person she used to be, the one who trusted people, the one who believed mentoring was pure, the one who believed love was safe. That person was gone. What was left was someone colder, harder, more calculating, someone who'd spent 6 months smiling while documenting betrayal, someone who'd weaponized kindness. Was that person someone she wanted to be? She didn't know, but she knew this. They had left her no choice. Rebecca opened her laptop, and she sent the email. The email went to 6 people: CEO, Chief Legal Officer, Head of HR, Head of Corporate Compliance, 3 board members. Subject line: Documentation of policy violations and corporate misconduct. Rebecca Mitchell. The body was professional, concise, factual. Dear name, over the past 6 months, I have been systematically documenting violations of company policy, theft of proprietary information, and planning of a competing business using company resources. All evidence is attached, organized chronologically and by category. I want to be clear. All training materials and knowledge transfer were provided per company standard protocols. Any deviations or misconduct documented below were committed independently by Ms. Chen and others named. I am prepared to discuss this in person at your earliest convenience and to provide testimony as needed. Respectfully, Rebecca Mitchell. The attachments were devastating. Screenshots, dozens of them. Messages between Melissa and David proving everything. Videos, time-stamped. Them in her office, going through her files, audio recordings, their voices planning client theft. David explicitly mentioning Tom's involvement and his cut of future business. Business registration for Chen Mitchell Consulting. Filed while Melissa was still employed, still bound by non-compete and confidentiality agreements. Complete documentation of training sessions. Notes showing that Rebecca provided standard protocols, with a clear separation between what was taught and what was later executed incorrectly. A timeline showing Rebecca's promotion announced 3 days after the accidental text. How it was accelerated. How it created the perfect opportunity to strip Rebecca of her accounts while she smiled and trained her replacement. Evidence that Tom Patterson knew about the relationship, facilitated it, pressured the timeline, attempted intimidation, and planned to profit from the competing business. Jason's evidence pulled from Melissa's home laptop, copies of client lists, target spreadsheets, draft outreach emails, internal files transferred to personal accounts, and the recording from the night David said it out loud. Stick to the plan. Tom gets a cut. Rebecca will never know. Rebecca hit send. Then she opened a second email to Jason Chen, same attachments, plus a short note. Jason, everything you need is here. I'm sorry it came to this, but you deserve the truth. Thank you for your help. I couldn't have done this without you. Take care of yourself. Rebecca. She hit send. Then she opened a third email to Melissa's work account. Subject line only. I know. No body. No attachments. Just those 2 words. Let her panic. Let her wonder how much. Then the fourth email to David's personal account. Subject. Divorce papers are on the kitchen counter. Body. I've known since March. About everything. The affair, the LLC, the plan to steal my clients. Tom's involvement. I documented all of it. Every text, every video, every conversation. I sent everything to my company, to Jason, to my lawyer. You can keep the LLC. You'll need it to pay your legal fees. Don't contact me. Rebecca. She sent all 4 emails at 5:47 p.m. Then she closed the laptop, sat in her car for a moment longer, and waited for her life to catch up with her. Rebecca drove home through late afternoon traffic. The sun low, the city loud, everyone rushing somewhere, like urgency meant safety. She parked in her driveway, walked inside. The house was quiet. She poured herself a glass of wine, not because she wanted it, because it gave her hands something to do. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she and David had eaten breakfast that morning, the same table where he'd kissed her cheek and said, "Love you," like the word was harmless. Rebecca stared at the wall and waited. The calls started at 6:23. First the CEO. His voice was tight, controlled, like he'd just read something that made him question every person in his building. "Rebecca," he said, "I need you to come in tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., conference room A." Rebecca kept her voice calm. "Of course." Then the chief legal officer called, then HR, each voice different, each one carrying the same undertone. Shock, alarm, calculation. Rebecca answered politely, agreed to everything, said she would be there. She didn't explain. She didn't justify. The evidence would speak. At 7:15, Melissa called. Rebecca watched the phone ring. Melissa's name on the screen. Melissa's number. Melissa's panic vibrating through the glass. Rebecca let it go to voicemail. The message was frantic, crying, begging. "Rebecca, please, please call me back. There's been a mistake. I don't understand. We need to talk. Please, please." Rebecca deleted it. At 7:45, Tom called. Rebecca answered. "Rebecca," Tom said. His voice was shaking. "We need to talk. I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything, Tom," Rebecca said. Her voice was flat, calm. "I have recordings. I have documentation. I sent it all to the board." Silence. Tom swallowed audibly. "You need to stop this," he said quickly. "We can work this out. I can explain." "No," Rebecca said. "You can't, and I won't." She hung up. At 8:02, David came home. Rebecca heard the front door open, heard his footsteps stop in the doorway of the kitchen. She didn't look up immediately. She took one slow sip of wine, then she raised her eyes. David's face was white, all color drained like someone pulled a plug. He stood there like he didn't recognize his own house. "What did you do?" he whispered. Rebecca set her glass down carefully. "I did what I had to do," she said. David's voice shook. "Rebecca, I can explain." "Don't," Rebecca said. Her voice was very quiet. I have 6 months of recordings, David. Video, audio, text messages. I know everything. I've known since March. David took a step forward, then stopped, like he was afraid of the space between them. 6 months? He said, voice cracking. I was training her, Rebecca said. While you were sleeping with her, I was smiling and teaching and documenting every single thing you both did wrong. David's mouth opened, then closed. Why didn't you just... He started. What? Rebecca cut in. Confront you? Scream? Cry? File for divorce immediately? She laughed once, no humor in it. Because I needed evidence, she said. For the divorce, yes, but also because you weren't just having an affair. You were stealing from my employer, using my work, my contacts, my strategies, building a competing business. She leaned forward slightly. That's not just betrayal, she said. That's a crime. David sat heavily in the chair across from her. The wood creaked. He put his head in his hands. Jesus Christ, he whispered. There's an envelope on the counter, Rebecca said. Her voice was flat now, empty. Divorce papers. I'm keeping the house. David looked up sharply. What? Rebecca didn't blink. You can keep your Chen Mitchell Consulting LLC, she said, but you'll be defending yourself in civil court for theft of intellectual property. Melissa will be defending herself in criminal court for corporate espionage. Good luck. David didn't move. Very quietly, he said, I'm sorry. Rebecca stared at him. No, she said. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. She stood, walked past him, went to the guest room, closed the door, locked it. And for the first time in 6 months, Rebecca Mitchell let herself cry. The next morning, at 9 a.m., Rebecca walked into conference room A. The CEO was there, legal, HR, compliance. The mood was sterile, cold, like the air had been filtered for emotion. They asked questions for 3 hours. Rebecca answered everyone, calmly, factually. She showed them how to navigate the evidence folder, where everything was, how it connected, how it was labeled, how it was time-stamped. At one point, the head of compliance asked, How did you get this? Rebecca didn't flinch. I documented what I observed, she said. I preserved what was sent to me. I retained records of company materials being transferred off-system. The chief legal officer flipped through pages, eyes narrowing. At noon, he looked up and said, This is the most thorough documentation I've ever seen. The CEO stared at Rebecca for a long moment. Then he asked the question people always ask when they don't understand what it feels like to be trapped. Why did you wait? He said. Why not come to us immediately? Rebecca kept her hands folded on the table, calm, controlled. Because I needed to be sure, she said. I needed irrefutable proof. If I'd come to you with suspicions and a few screenshots, you would have investigated internally. They would have had time to cover their tracks. She held the CEO's gaze. This way, she said. There's no question. The CEO nodded slowly. Melissa Chen is terminated effective immediately, he said. For cause, we'll be filing suit. And Tom Patterson? Rebecca asked. The chief legal officer answered. That's being handled. By noon 30, Melissa was escorted out of the building. Security walked her through the lobby like she was a threat. People watched from behind glass walls, whispered, looked away. Melissa's face was pale, her eyes wide. She looked like she couldn't decide whether to cry or scream. She saw Rebecca near the elevator. For half a second, their eyes met. Melissa's mouth moved, like she was trying to form a word. Rebecca didn't react. The elevator doors closed. Melissa disappeared. That afternoon, David was served at his office. Not at home, not quietly. At work, in front of people who would remember. By 3 p.m., 3 former clients had called the company. They'd been contacted by Chen Mitchell Consulting. They wanted to report what looked like corporate espionage. One forwarded an email, sent from Melissa's personal account, using information that was clearly proprietary, information she could only have gotten from Rebecca. The company's legal team moved fast, cease and desist letters, emergency motions, preservation orders, IT audits. Every access log pulled, every file transfer reviewed. The case wasn't emotional anymore, it was technical. And technical cases don't care how pretty your lies are. David tried to call Rebecca that night. She didn't answer. He tried again. She didn't answer. He sent a text. "Please, I'm scared." Rebecca stared at the screen for a moment, then turned the phone off. Melissa tried too. Voicemails, emails, messages from unknown numbers. Rebecca didn't listen, didn't read, didn't respond, because responses create openings, and Rebecca was done leaving doors unlocked. By the end of the week, the consequences were public inside the company. Melissa was gone. Tom was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The official email used the word restructuring. No one believed it. David's name was removed from internal projects, his access revoked. He wasn't just a cheating husband now, he was a liability, and companies do not love liabilities. 2 weeks later, Jason called Rebecca's work number. Rebecca stepped into her new office, temporary, not yet the corner, but already higher than where she'd been, and closed the door. "Jason," she said. His voice sounded different, not healed, but steadier. "Wanted you to know," he said. "The divorce settlement came through. Melissa signed everything." Rebecca exhaled slowly. "She also agreed to testify about the corporate espionage," Jason added, "in exchange for a reduced penalty in her own case." Rebecca was silent. Jason's voice was low. "They're destroying each other now. You don't even have to do anything. They're doing it to themselves." Rebecca stared out the window at the river. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Better," Jason said. "Getting therapy, trying to figure out who I am without her." "I understand that," Rebecca said. There was a pause. Then Jason asked, "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Rebecca thought about the months of smiling, the months of swallowing rage, the nights of pretending to sleep beside a man she no longer recognized. "No," she said, "but I regret that it had to happen at all." Jason let out a quiet breath. "Yeah," he said. "Me too." Another pause. "Thank you," Jason said, "for giving me the choice, for letting me be part of it. It helped somehow." Rebecca swallowed. "Take care of yourself, Jason." "You too," he said. The call ended. 3 months later, Rebecca sat in her new office. 14th floor. Corner view. Windows overlooking the Chicago River. Her name was on the door now. Vice President. She had a report due tomorrow. A meeting in an hour. 2 new hires to interview next week. Life had moved on, the way life always does after it ruins you and then expects you to keep showing up. There was a knock. Her assistant stepped in. "Email from the board chair," she said. "Marked urgent." Rebecca's stomach tightened. She opened it. From Margaret Hayes. Subject: "Thank you for your diligence. Ms. Mitchell, I want to inform you that your documentation corroborates an internal investigation we've been conducting into Mr. Patterson for some time. Your evidence was the final piece we needed. Tom Patterson has been terminated. We discovered he engaged in similar conduct previously, with other employees, other transfers. You weren't the first, but because of your thoroughness, you'll be the last. We're implementing new company-wide policies on workplace relationships and intellectual property protection. I've been watching your career since I hired you 8 years ago. When the situation developed, I believed you had the integrity and intelligence to handle it appropriately. You exceeded expectations. Welcome to the executive team. Margaret Hayes, board chair." Rebecca read it twice. They'd been investigating Tom. For some time. They'd been watching, which meant they'd known something was wrong, known she would figure it out, believed she would handle it with integrity. Rebecca leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. She hadn't just gotten revenge. She'd been part of something larger, and she'd played her role perfectly. She closed her laptop slowly and looked out at the city. Millions of people, millions of lives. Some kind, some cruel, some just trying to survive. Rebecca had survived. Melissa was gone. Her career scorched. Her marriage collapsed. Her name poisoned. David was fighting lawsuits he couldn't afford, watching his own choices swallow him alive. Tom was finished. Not just moved quietly to another division, terminated, exposed, stopped. And Rebecca was here, in the office she'd earned, with the view she'd deserved. But the victory didn't feel clean. It felt sharp, like a blade that had cut through them and through her at the same time. Because the person who used to believe the best in people was gone. The person who used to mentor without suspicion was gone. The person who used to love without recording devices was gone. Rebecca stared at the river and listened to the quiet hum of the building around her. The world kept moving, meetings, emails, deadlines. But sometimes, late at night, she thought about those 6 months, smiling at people destroying her, teaching someone who was stealing from her, sleeping beside a man who had already left, becoming someone cold enough to document betrayal like a project plan. She'd won, but she wasn't sure what she'd traded to do it, and she wasn't sure she would ever get it back.